Good. What is good, people? Back again with another podcast. These seem to be coming around quick and fast since we're in lockdown. I've got a man that's managing the Premier League, managed at most clubs in the EFL, being very, very successful, has had a really, really impressive career abroad as well now at the moment. Mr. Phil Brown, how are you, pal? You good?
I'm excellent, Joe. I'm just current working in a broadcasting team over in the Hero ISL in India, nice. Where I embarked on my, if you want to call it, international career. I always wanted to coach or manage or even play abroad, just to sample what a different culture would be like, different changing rooms, different languages, etc., etc. So, rightly or wrongly, 2 years ago, I decided to join Pune City in the ISL, and then consequently that went to Hyderabad as a sale of a franchise, and now I'm working on the broadcasting side of things until the next coaching position comes up. But I'm managing to tick a lot of boxes in coaching and football in general, and I can't emphasize enough what a great career and life that I've had out of football. You know, it's almost now 42 years I've been involved in a wonderful industry, and it's had its moments. Don't get me wrong, but it's in the ascendancy and also in the descendancy. But yeah, I've really, really enjoyed every minute of it.
So obviously you had a great career. I think over 300, 400 games professionally. Did you always kind of know from going into professional football that you wanted to go into coaching afterwards, or as you were kind of coming towards the end of your career, you were like, coaching's for me? Or
no, far from it. I didn't go into the playing side of it until late. And what I mean by late, you don't even hear of anybody coming out of non-league football or even Sunday league football and signing their first pro contract at 20. Normally, the size of football clubs and, more importantly, the scouting networks that they employ, there's no real, you can't really slip through anybody's fingers. Everything's covered, all the bases are covered. So even if you are talking about Sunday league football, which is probably a very, very rare occasion that you'll get that needle in the haystack now. But that's actually the way my journey started. I was an electrician by trade, working on the banks of the River Tyne for a company called Pyrotechnics. And so I served my time as an electrician till I was 20. And then the day I got my indenture forms, I signed pro forms for Hartlepool United. So that journey started way, way back. And I kept an electrical business going during the course of my early days as a pro footballer, and really? Very similar to, many people, but one in particular, Stuart Pearce, who actually advertised in the Nottingham Forest programme that he could do rewires and stuff like that. I actually did the same at Hartlepool United. I advertised, free advertisement, that I could rewire your house for whatever price it was in them days. But that was the early days. But I just kept my business going. I kept an electrical business going. And then 28, 29, 30, I invested in a bar and a restaurant and a nightclub. So I was always running sort of concurrently with working as a pro footballer. I was always doing something on the side, far away from the game, to tell you the truth. And then one chance conversation that I had with Bruce Rioch, of all people. And he said to me, I'd heard that you've got a business and you will probably be thinking about life after football. This was when I was 32, 33 year old. Yeah. And I said, yeah, I've thought long and hard about life after football. And he said to me, go and do your coaching badges. Start your coaching badges. He said, you cannot give whatever you have got. You cannot give it away to football. You can't think about walking away from football whenever you retire, 35, 36, whatever it is. So I started my coaching badges. I did, the first thing I did was the Certificate of Applied Management, which was a course that was being run in the Northwest. I was at Bolton at the time, and it was being run in St Helens. So It was a residential course, but I could actually work from home because it was so close. And I did the Certificate of Applied Management, and that got me teeth into that side of the game. But then I started the C, the B, the A licenses, and then eventually got to the full license, and then the pro license, and I just kept on learning all the way through. So when I retired as a 38-year-old, fortunately, I kept on playing until I was 38. By that time, I had met Sam Allardyce at Blackpool. And when he had to let go Bobby Saxton, the great Bobby Saxton, I thought Bobby was fantastic as a manager. When he had to let him go because of circumstances at Blackpool, I got a call asking if I would be interested in taking up the position of first-team coach. So it chance meeting with Sam just became a wonderful relationship over the course of the next 10, 12, 15 years of my coaching and managing career.
And I think, I'm glad you spoke about Sam, because I think a lot of people just know Sam as obviously done wonders with Bolton, but I'd say to majority of football, people that aren't in football, kind of fans and stuff like that, they look at Sam as he comes in, gets results, keeps people up, all this stuff. But really, not many people know about him, about how much he brought in terms of the nutrition, the sports science side of things. And that kind of came in at Bolton. What was that like? Obviously, he kind of was one of the, I say pioneers, but one of the first people really to look at football in a lot more detail. What was that like for you, obviously, being around that and experiencing that from being a player to now going into your first job in coaching?
Well, you say, and it's a great word, and I wouldn't be too ashamed attaching that word to Sam as being a pioneer. I would absolutely admonish that. I would say 100% he was thinking about how to become a better person, a better player, a better manager, a better coach. All of them things when he actually finished his career as a player, when he had a year in America. And when he came back from America, he obviously then set about trying to get a job in England. And he started his days as reserve team coach at West Bromwich Albion, of all places, where he's at now, under Brian Talbot. And then he just harboured ambitions, the same as we all do. You have them underneath the radar. You don't want to start spouting off from the rooftop saying that I'm going to be the next England coach. You're trying to find a pathway into the game. You're trying to find a way to get to the achievement or the ambitions that you're setting out from the early days, and he always wanted to be a manager. I didn't share them same ambitions when I first started. I wanted to coach. I wanted to sample what it was like being a coach first and foremost. And then having worked alongside with Sam, I wanted his position. I wanted to be the number one. I wanted to be the head coach. Never heard of head coach in them days. It was always the manager. You wanted to be, you had a manager, assistant manager, first team coach, if you had enough money. If you didn't, you had a manager and an assistant manager. And then you had to do all the coaching yourself. When we were at Blackpool, when I first got offered the job, we had a manager under Sam. We had a first team coach under me, but I also did the reserves. And we had a head of physiotherapy, and we had a chief scout, and that was it. We had four people that were running the show. We had somebody that would help us, that had ambitions of becoming a coach in Mike Davies, who was coming to the end of his career. So I was just probably a couple of years ahead of Mike, and Mike was coming to the end of his career, and he wanted to be a coach. So we had somebody that could help with regards to doing the reserves, planning the reserves, bringing players along in that environment. And all of these things were cost-cutting exercises because Blackpool weren't able to afford it. So you had to maximise resources. And that's something that we learned from minute one, that we had to maximise every department, every resource that we had to try and get the best out of the players. We played with psychology. We played with sports science. We played with it in the early days. Then all of a sudden, we all found ourselves, and every one of us that started in that journey at Blackpool, every one of us worked together at Bolton Wanderers. And not many people know that. Mark Taylor, head of physiotherapy, or shall we say, head of sports science, which it eventually became. Jack Chapman, God rest his soul, chief scout, head of recruitment, which it eventually became at Bolton Wanderers. And I became assistant manager and Sam was manager. And then we had probably 30 or 40 staff then because we could afford it. And I always remember sitting in a staff meeting on a Monday morning and Sam was just laughing this Monday morning. It was about 8 o'clock. We used to start staff meetings on a Monday morning. Whether you had a midweek game or not, it didn't matter. It was just preparation for that week. And them meetings were vital. And we started off with 4. And one day I was sitting there and Sam was just laughing. And I said, "What are you laughing at?" And he said, "Just count how many people's in the room." There was 36 people in the room. So we started off with 4, and we ended up with 36. But that was heads of departments and everybody that was under them, you know. So we had heads of the physiotherapy department, which is probably had about 5 or 6 behind them. We had a head of an analysis department. He had 5 or 6 people behind him. We had the academy in there. They had probably 12, 13 people. We had secretaries that could help us with all the office work and all of the things that we needed to do. We were absolutely maximizing the resources, but it was down to Sam being able to handle a budget, you know. And I think that's important. And the most important part was when we got promoted at Bolton from the Championship to the Premier League, our budget was just over 6 million. When you think about that now, it's quite phenomenal.
Crazy.
We were just over 6 million. We got promoted from the Championship to the Premier League, and they afforded us just over 7 million for survival in the Premier League. And then we were selling players along the way. We were selling, Klaus Jensen for 3.5 million, Ada Johnson for 4 million, Alan Thompson for 4 million. But every time we sold a player, Sam didn't get that pot of money to buy more players. He got a contribution from that sale of a player to build a better training ground facility, to build a better changing room, to build a better environment. And we were happy with that. We had an environment that was second to none. And so all of these brand new environments that you're seeing now, the Leicester new training ground, Spurs new training ground, we were building it from within. So we didn't get a new site with 100 acres of land. We had 10 acres of land and we built it from within. And it was just home. And it was brilliant that we got that environment. And that was a big player to any success that we got.
Do you think that's overlooked now, especially with a lot of managers and a lot of teams? I think they automatically see, if we sell one player, we need to get someone in to replace it. When, like you're kind of describing, and I spoke to loads of people and they speak about, like they said, that team environment, the environment that you build from within. You may sell Johnson, but you might be looking at, we've got such a good environment that the second person who was behind him, the third choice striker, can come in now and he can do a job. Is that from kind of Sam and the environment that he was creating and yourself, or was that just that's what he had to work with?
I think there's a lot of things. You've got to cut your cloth accordingly in the early days. And what I mean, the 6 million budget, the 7 million budget. If I told you the story about Alan Thompson and more in particular, Ada Johnson. Ada Johnson was a PSV apprentice when he went over on his ankle, and it was a career-threatening injury. And actually, PSV washed the hands of him to a certain extent, but retained his registration. He went back to Iceland, and he was sitting on his backside for 18 months with his broken ankle, as it were. And Sam actually didn't sign him. It was Colin Todd. Colin Todd was manager at the time. I was assistant, and we had a good relationship with Iceland at the time because we had Gudni Bergson was club captain, and we got Gudni Bergson from Spurs, and he had been brought in from Iceland by the Spurs scouting network. But he was a great captain, and he kept on saying to us that he said, we've got a small island just up in the North Atlantic there. Probably same size as Bolton, same population as Bolton. But we've got 45 players from that 280,000 population. We've got 45 players in top flight football around the world. So we're doing something right. So we started investigating a little further. And Ada Johnson was sitting at home in Reykjavik, and we invited him in for a pre-season. And he came in, and we were looking at this guy and going, wow, what a player. And he was a 1.5 stone, 2 stone overweight. and he was running circles and rings round our centre halves. And I'm talking about people like Gunny Bergson, like Mark Fish, like Mike Whitlow in the early days. And we inquired then to be at PSV if they still had a financial involvement. Well, they withheld his registration. They asked for £125,000. We gave them it under duress, I might add. We gave them it. And then 4 years later, we sold him for £4 million to Chelsea. 4 years later, he went for an £8 million transfer fee to Barcelona. He was a wonderful player, but we had to shop in them shops. We had to, try and investigate further on players like Ida Gudjohnsen. If he's at PSV on an apprenticeship scheme, there must be something good about him.
Yeah.
Technically,
he's not bad.
Technically, he's got to be okay. So we then investigated further about this ankle, and he was feeling good. He was feeling good about his ankle. So we just had to get the medical people to get him out there every day, which we did. And again, maximising resources. What was more important to Ida Gudjohnsen? Not me coaching him, not Sam coaching him. The medical people making sure he was available for training every day. And that's the way it evolved, That's whatever you needed, we provided. Sam had this theory that when he came from America, one coach per player. Jeez. Now, whatever that coach was, that could be a physiotherapist.
Yeah.
That could be a psychologist. That could be a Tai Chi instructor. That could be a coach. That could be a flexibility guy. It could be anything. But you had one coach per player. So not every stone was left, no stone was left unturned.
Yeah. And when obviously you're there seeing all this, and obviously you're early on in your career in terms of coaching, and you said about obviously you want to be the main guy. At what point, because a lot of fans will see it and they see, like John Terry at Aston Villa, he might be sitting there thinking, I want to be a first team manager. How does that kind of come about where you want to leave as assistant manager, doing successful and breaking out on your own? Is that just kind of your natural belief that you're like, no, I can do this, I know what I want to achieve? Or
no, it was a personal ambition that was voiced to my boss. Basically, the next guy in line was Sam. I wasn't going to go to the owners and say this. I was going to go to Sam, and we had many. The reason why it worked, it was like a marriage, we had many honest, truthful conversations about my ambition, his ambition, and whatever. We were really close. There's no doubt about it. When we left each other, it wasn't broken by any stretch of the imagination. We just qualified for Europe from our position in the Premier League. So I eventually I couldn't take it any further. What I wanted to do was take my career further.
Yeah.
So I said to him, when I was it's a funny part. When I was caretaker manager for 5 games when Colin Todd resigned, I won 4 of them 5 games, and I was called into the Reebok Stadium, which it was called then, by the owners, the chairman and the vice chairman, which was Phil Gartside, again, God rest his soul, and Brett Warburton. And I'm expecting to walk into the Reebok Stadium having been offered the job, and it was mine to say no to.
Yeah, of course.
And when I opened the door, Sam was sitting in my seat, as it were, because I'd been sitting in the manager's seat when Colin Todd had left. And Sam was sitting there, and oh dear me. We had worked together for 2 years at Blackpool. He had gone his way, done a great job at Notts County, fantastic job at Notts County. And I had left Blackpool, and I'd come to Bolton Wanderers. And in my first season, we got promoted to the Premier League. And in my second season, we got relegated from the Premier League. And it was the third season when Colin decided to resign. And I got the job for 5 games. And then he just said, it's mine. It's my job. You can work with me if you want to work with me. He said, but we have to have the understanding that I'm the one, you're the assistant.
Yeah.
And if you ever apply for a job, I'm on your CV. Yeah. I'm going to be recommending you for that job. So don't apply for jobs if I don't know anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
Now that for me was music to my ears.
Yeah, definitely.
It was so honest. It was brutally honest. You want a job, apply for it by all means. But I'm the guy that they're going to phone and say, what's he like? So if you're applying for it and I don't know about it, that's not the relationship. That's not the relationship I want. So we went from that moment. And in the just over 6 years, nearly 7, we knocked at the door of promotion and got beaten on over 2 legs by Ipswich. So missed out in the first year in the playoffs. In the second year, got promoted in the playoffs, beat Preston North End in the final. So we're now 1999-2000 in the Premier League. And it was all about survival.
Yeah.
The first year, we've got to stay there. And then there was second year syndrome. It was all about survival the second year. Then the third year was like, hold on a second. We might be a little bit better than this. In the third year, we were just getting a feel for it, So we finished mid-table. The fourth year, we started thinking, can we get 1.5 points per game? Can we get, from 38 games, can we get 57 points? So we're starting to get a little bit ambitious. 57 points was going to get us into the top 6, top 7 maybe. Miss out on Europa League, maybe just miss out. And then all of a sudden we get to it and we qualify. And in them 6-7 years, I applied for 3 jobs. West Bromwich Albion, and I hit the post and Brian Robson got it. Burnley, I hit the post again. And I'm trying to think who got the job at Burnley before Sean Dyche. And I can't think. And then Derby County came along. Sorry?
Brian Laws, was it?
Was it Brian? It might have been Brian.
Or Owen? Owen Cole?
No, it was before. I think it was before then. It was about 2002, 2003.
Okay.
Anyway, long story short, the third one I applied for was Derby County, and I got the Derby County job. And then Sam had a brief period with Sammy Lee, and then he went to Newcastle at the end of that season. So it was a wonderful journey. There's no doubt about it. But I never undermined him once. I never tried to take his job once. I thought it was an absolute tremendous relationship that succeeded from minute one because of honesty, because of hard work, because of endeavour, because of open minds, and recruitment policy. We recruited staff better than we recruited players.
Yeah.
Because we knew the staff were responsible for keeping them players out there. That's all we had to do. We knew the players were good enough. We just had to keep them out there.
And you spoke about some of those adjectives you said about, obviously, honesty, hard work, resilience. From a manager and a coaching perspective, do you think those are some of the most important things when it comes to managing and coaching players? Because at any level, you're talking grassroots, whatever, if you're honest, I think, with anyone, because at the end of the day, they're just human beings. And just because they get more money than a lot of other average people, they're still human beings. They're still going to react the same. Do you think that's one thing that you've carried out for the whole of your career, how honest you were with the players? So if you didn't want someone, you'd tell them and then you'd help them find somewhere else? Or
the first thing I'll say, Joe, to that is whenever a kid or a young coach asks me what's the key ingredient, I always say, be honest to yourself, first and foremost. If you're honest to yourself, you can go to sleep at night. If it's even amidst the biggest pressure that you can ever dream of, and managing Hull City in the Premier League was synonymous of that kind of pressure. But the first word I learned over here was imandari. Imandari is Hindi, and it's quite simply honesty. And it's as soon as you say it to an Indian, imandari, they rock back on their heels because they think, oh, they know a little bit of their language. But there was a couple of others. I had imandari, which was honesty. Belief was yaqeen, and bharosa was trust. So the words that I think, if you go through your life with, but first and foremost to yourself, trust yourself, believe in yourself, but be honest to yourself, you'll not go far wrong. I'm not saying you'll make millions. You'll not go far wrong. You'll sleep at night for sure. But just depends on what you want out of life.
I was going to say, you say about obviously Hull, and I think a lot of people that aren't maybe in the coaching world, but fans of football will know you from your time at Hull and everything. Did you take things that you've learned from obviously your time at Bolton and, like we just said there, honesty with yourself, honesty with players, obviously not having, I'm guessing, the biggest budget at Hull at the time, and then getting promoted and staying in the Premier League, was that a major part of your success with Hull in terms of keeping them up? Honesty with yourself and the players?
Yes, very much so. And also the honesty in hindsight, why it went wrong. Could I have had an even better career if I'd made just one or two decisions right and based them on different things? I'm doing the diploma this year, the Uefa Diploma, which is the next step on from the pro license. And people might be saying, well, people on the course are actually asking me, what are you doing on the course? You're 40 odd years in the game and coached at every level in England and now abroad. And what are you doing on the course? And I just don't think you ever stop learning. Mm-hmm. Never ever think that you're going to sit back and think, well, I know it all, because it'll just kick you right in the proverbials, So when I'm doing this pro license, a lot of people ask questions about, what happened and Hull City being a main topic of conversation. And one of the things that we worked on was your powers of persuasion, your powers of negotiation. And if I had more powers of persuasion and negotiation, and I can talk, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
And understanding a subject is a key ingredient to being able to talk with confidence. But if I go back to my time at Hull, forget about halftime team talks and forget about singing after a game and all of the things that I'm associated with.
Yeah.
But if you attach singing after a game with actually, hold on a second, we survived that year. Yeah. We were absolutely 1-20 on favourites to get relegated, not to finish 17th, to finish rock bottom.
Rock bottom, yeah.
We were 1-20 favourites for the finish there. We were 1-20 favourites to get less points than what Derby achieved under Paul Jewell, which was 13 points or 12 points. And all of these things were negativities that were surrounding the whole job. When I was singing on the pitch at the end of that season, it's because we survived. We actually survived. That was a bigger achievement than getting promoted to the Premier League. Mm-hmm. And that was actually at the end of the season when I actually had sat people down on the pitch at half-time at Main Road, at the Etihad Stadium. Yeah. So all of them things were synonymous with negativity, but at the end of the day, we survived.
Yeah.
And I just, some people can't quite, they don't work it out chronologically. But the reason why I think the reason why I lost my job, I made one poor, massive decision. We brought Jimmy Bullard in and broke the bank with regards to wages. That wasn't a bad decision. It broke down in his very first game. That was just unfortunate. He actually went over and did his ACL second time around.
Jesus. On
the same knee, and believe it or not, against the same team, same player, Scott Parker. You couldn't write this. Couldn't write the script. So somebody's dealt me a real bad hand there. But the bad hand I dealt myself was I would have said 97, 98% close to signing Bobby Zamora. Mm-hmm. After we'd signed Jimmy Bullard, I was signing Bobby Zamora, and it was going to be for more money again. So he was going to we're going to break the bank again.
Again, yeah.
And my assistant manager and my first team coach, both very well-respected and well-trusted members of the footballing fraternity, Brian Horton and Steve Parker, were working class men exactly the same as me, but were worried about the fact that we're breaking the bank again here and we're going to bring another guy in we're going to pay him even more money. But the Premier League was going that way.
Yeah.
And it wasn't as if we didn't have the vision for it. It was that lack of ambition to go, we broke the bank, Jimmy Bullard, he's lying in a hospital bed. That money's now wasted. We're not going to see Jimmy for another year. And now we're breaking the bank again. And instead of holding my nerve and doing it, I signed two players, Jan Vennegoor of Hesseling,
yep,
and Jose Altidore, for the same amount of money as I was going to give to one player, I signed the two. I got 2 for 1, and that was a bad decision. And I'm not saying that they were right and I was wrong, or I'm right and they're wrong. I'm just saying, in hindsight, and give me a pint of hindsight any time of the week. You know, I've got wonderful memories of Hull City. I've got wonderful memories of Bolton Wanderers. The times there, the longevity that we had, all down to great people, the recruitment policies, great invention, innovative thought, you know, all the things that you could possibly think of about keep on evolving and keep on going forward as a coach. Some of them were crazy ideas, but we went with it. You know, once we decided, we went with it. And I think that's the most important part. When you get a group of people together, close them doors and thrash it out, brainstorm it, just thrash it out. You'll have arguments, you'll have fallouts, absolutely. But keep them doors closed. And when you've had them arguments and fallouts, open the doors and you sing from the same hymn sheet. Once you agree to it all, you sing from the same hymn sheet. You never undermine anybody. You just believe that we can't do it any further. We can't grind it anymore. We can't brainstorm it anymore. We've thought about every eventuality, and now the doors are open to the world. This is what we think.
No, 100%. And you speak a lot there about obviously signing those 2 players instead of 1 and examples like that. One player for me that I don't even know where he went after Hull, but I remember him just being visually on the eye, and you'll be able to test more to it. Is it Giovanni from Man City?
Giovanni.
What?
Yeah.
I remember that because I was like at that time when Man City was slowly, I think it was the season after they ended up getting bought by the owners that they're owned by now. What was that kind? Was he a free agent as well? I believe. It
was a chance. I'm saying a free agent. I'll talk you through it because you know I'm not doing anybody a disservice here. You know we all did the books and there was nothing illegal about what we did at Hull City. But I was a chance meeting I was after a 3rd choice goalkeeper. And what I mean by that, I don't mean the guy I was bringing in was 3rd choice. I mean, I wanted to bring a 3rd one in there because we had Bose Myhill and we had Matt Duke. And neither had played in the Premier League, you know, so we were going into the unknown. But what I had done is, as a motivator, if you like, I'd promised everybody in the Championship, when we were in that final 15 games running, when I sensed a little bit of nervous tension flying around, listen, you're all fighting for contracts and we're all fighting for the same thing. I'm promising everyone in this changing room that you will play for Hull City and me in the Premier League. Just get us there. And it really took a little bit of weight off them. And you know, I recently said on TV here, when you squeeze an orange, and a psychologist once said this to me, when you squeeze an orange, what comes out? And I look at him, well, orange juice, obviously. Well, that's the answer. When you get squeezed as a person, what comes out? The real you. And the squeeze being the analogy, squeeze being pressure. So I'm going into a final 15-game running, and I'm squeezing every individual, every last drop out of every individual to try and get us promoted to the Premier League. And the real people came out, you know, the real Dean Winders stepped up to the plate, the real, you know, you're talking about Giovanni, the real Nicky Barmby and people like that, you know, actually got us there. So when we got there, I wanted to replicate what Sam had done in some wonderful signings like JJ Okocha, Yuri Yokayev. And it was a loan market that he had gone into, and he maximised that loan market because nobody else was doing it. So I'm talking about 97, 98, 99. Sam was investigating the loan market where you take over somebody's wages. It's common practice now, but it was never heard of then. So this is the businessman side of Sam coming out. So I wanted to do it. I wanted a stellar signing, someone that's going to just sort of turn everybody's head. Not just from a financial point of view, from a footballing perspective, you know, who was going to fly the flag that had brought Jimmy Bullard in for to do, you know, that type of thing. And he's lying in a hospital bed. And I was looking to Tony Warner, the goalkeeper, you know, he was a Scouse lad. I think he was 3rd choice at Man City. And I was talking to an agent with Brian Horton one day who was coming at Manchester City's training ground on a regular basis. He knew all the players at Man City. He did a lot of deals where Man City were concerned. He had been working with Peter Reid fairly closely in his days at Man City, and Brian Horton knew him very well. So we set this meeting up with the agent, and we're asking about Tony Warner. He said, what do you want to bring Tony in for? I said, well, just put the cat amongst the pigeons, instead of having two goalkeepers carrying one work and one as a number two, I want to go three in the Premier League, because it's more of a demand, it's more of an ask, and putting that extra spanner in the works, instead of looking over your shoulder, you've got one, you've got two goalkeepers, just to keep everybody fresh, keep everybody motivated. And at the end of that meeting, we'd done a deal for Tony Warner. And at the end of that meeting, he said, are you still in the market for players? I said, yeah, absolutely. He said, what would Giovanni do you? And Brian Horton just looked at me, and you don't want to overreact. No. And Nobby was a poker player, and he said, Giovanni, yeah, what's the deal like? He said, I can get him out of Man City on a free transfer. We've gone, all right. He said, so what's the wages like? And the wages were sort of a quarter of what we were giving Jimmy Bullard. And we've gone, wow, this is
on now.
This is interesting. I said, but what's the hatch? What's the key? What's the something not right about it? He said, well, there's no transfer fee, but I want 250 grand. So there's your transfer fee. So the agent was after the transfer fee. Yeah. But I can guarantee you I can get him out of Man City on a free transfer. So
okay.
I went to me chairman, just said, Chairman, I said, Giovanni's going to cost us 250 grand transfer fee. And he went, yeah. And he said he's going to cost us X amount of pounds per week. And he went, yeah. What's the catch? I went, that's it. Said the 250 grand transfer fee goes to the agent, or doesn't go to Man City. All right, okay. Right, makes sense. Let's get the deal done. Next thing you know, Giovanni's a Hull City player. And my word, what a player. For the first 10, 12 games, what a player. Then for the last 10, 12 games, what a player. The middle 10, 12 games when it's snowing, not so good.
Not great, yeah.
Just a little bit of Brazilian comes out, I mean, it's a little bit cold in England for a Brazilian. But no, he was fabulous for me. You can't sing his praises enough. And that was all to do with a chance meeting.
Do you look at, obviously, you spoke about those players there, Windass, Barmby. Obviously, they're coming at the later end of their career, but they got you up in that instance.
Yeah.
You then get in players like, obviously, Bullard's there, Giovanni. You've got a couple of players here and there, a couple of youngsters. Do you look at that whole team, and I remember it now, and you spoke about the halftime, we did at halftime at Man City, but you look at all those players there, I would look at all of them in all the games you won, you managed to stay up. The character of that squad looked way better than technical ability on the pitch, if that makes sense.
Unbelievably.
Would you say that is the main reason why you stayed up, if not the reason? The character?
We had a funny, and he was funny, but he was brilliant at the same time, because he had a sense of humour second to none. But he was a manager of tremendous stature and knowledge in Colin Murphy. Mm-hmm. And if you go back to the days of Harry Redknapp making his, and I recently I listened to a podcast from Bolton Wanderers, which Trevor Morgan, Trevor's one of the most successful managers that's ever come out of England, abroad, I'm talking about. He had 9 trophies at SC East Bengal, where Robbie Fowler's at the moment. Mm-hmm. But he won 9 trophies, and he lives in Australia, and it's one of the main reasons why I'm here, because he has connections over here. And Trevor Morgan was telling on this podcast how he was signed by Harry Redknapp at Bournemouth. And Harry was in his early days as a manager. In fact, his very first game was a 9-0 drubbing by Lincoln's. True this. 9-0 drubbing by Lincoln City, who was managed by Colin Murphy. So all them years back, I'm now sitting in an office with Phil Parkinson, who was manager when I first went back to Hull. I then became his first team coach. But Phil Parkinson's assistant manager was Colin Murphy, a man of unbelievable, you could say interest, but also experience. You can't imagine sitting in the same room with him because he had a wicked sense of humour.
Yeah.
And you tell stories, you tell some great stories, but you could see Phil sometimes, and sometimes myself, because he was my assistant manager when I first got the job at Hull City. He used to sit there and say, "You're deliberating over something. I can see you've got a problem with maybe your last player or your last couple of choices. You'll have 9 out of 11 guaranteed already written down, and you're trying to work out the 10th one. You're trying to work out the 11th one. You're having a problem with it, I can see you're struggling with it." He said, "I'll make it easy for you. Who are you playing on Saturday?" And you'd say somebody like, I don't know, Bristol City. What are they? Are they a technical team or are they a physical team? Technical. Okay. So what do you want to beat them with? Technicality or physicality? You'd say a mixture. You'd probably say a mixture. Absolutely. Right answer. Now, write down your 9 and write how many players are technical and how many players are physical. They can't be both, right? So you think of a player, Giovanni, you think technical.
Technical.
So you think of a player, Ian Ashby, you think physical. He has technical attributes, but it's physical.
Physical, yeah.
And you can't have, he's both. He's got to be technical or he's got to be physical. And when you get to your 9th, your last 2 will just fall in place. He says, because you'll either go for a physical player or you'll either go for a technical player.
Yeah.
You'll either go for both, you'll either go for whichever. Mm-hmm. And it sort of made it easier. I started seeing a little bit more clarity. And before you know it, you get to 10 very easily. And your last player is the key to the game, the key to winning that game. Over the opposition, you've got to work out the opposition first. So it's no sense in waiting until 5-3 on a Saturday afternoon and making that 11th choice just before you hand a team sheet in. And I know it's an hour before now, but you've got to deliberate over this. Mm-hmm. And it's all to do with that little gem from Colin Murphy. And it's stuck with me right the way through my career. It's been fantastic that you can actually decide all these problems that you have about, is it his character? Is it his physical? But one of the main people, all the people that we had, all these wonderful players that we signed, one of the first people on the team sheet was Ian Ashby. Mm-hmm. And he was signed in the old 4th division, 2nd division, and he captained Hull City right the way through. Never underestimate that, Joe. Never underestimate that. He was first on the team sheet in the Premier League, and that wasn't a soft choice. That was a hard choice by a manager who trusted a player 1,000,000%. Every time he crossed the line, he would give 100. He'd give 1,000,000% for the club.
Yeah.
So all of them are great little stories, little anecdotes about how we actually got to the character of Hull City and not really the technical ability of Hull City, which we had. We had some.
Yeah. Jeez. And does that? I saw a interview with yourself. I think it was with Pune City when you signed. And you said, I think one of the questions was, how do you like to play football? How what's your philosophy? And you said something really interesting that you don't hear from a lot of managers. And I think the lower you go down in the leagues, it's ugly football. It's long ball. It's this. It's that. And you said your whole job is to get results and it's to be effective in that game. Does that kind of stem throughout your whole career? Obviously, from Hull going to Swindon and then obviously at Southend as well. Was your whole ethos, because you're not in the ways of Man City to go, I can have this player, that player, this player, that player. You've got to be effective in winning the game. Has that followed you everywhere, even to where you are now, where you need to be effective and you need to win games?
It's a great question, but it's a difficult one to answer in the modern day world that we live in because of 2 things. I think the game is now not a game for coaches anymore. It's a game for accountants, strangely enough, and it's a game for lawyers. And even the likes of the might of Man City, who have a 30 million euro, fine over their heads because of FS, like financial fair play. All of them things come into play with regards to who they can afford and who who they can bring in and who head coaches and this and the other. And the word philosophy is the second part of that. I have a philosophy that I don't ever, and this was something that was given to me by an old teammate of mine who is managing in Scotland at the moment, and he's done very well in the lower leagues. He's had a couple of opportunities higher up, but I knew him from his days when he played at Blackpool with me as central midfield, Mickey Mellon. Mm-hmm. Mickey's up in Scotland at the moment, and he's rightly so got an opportunity because he's one of them grafters. He's one of them journeymen that has his philosophy of playing. Mm-hmm. And it's born out of the fact of this comment. We stood there when he brought Tranmere to Swindon. And I think if you look back at the game, they went 2-0 up against us and we beat them 3-2 with a last-minute winner. And when he came in the office, I apologised. I said, because, last minutes in games can go either way. He could hit the post, it comes out, ball ends up in the net at the other end.
Yeah.
That's how football is. That's the fine lines. That's the margins. But I quoted then when I apologised to him in the office. He said, "Don't be silly." He said, "At the end of the day, it was a fantastic spectacle." And he said, "Remember what I said to you when we were at Blackpool?" He said, "You imagine the guy in the stand. He's got to sit there and watch this. And if you're not entertaining him, what chance are you? Chance have you got? So if you're standing on the touchline and you've got that opinion, you've got to be in the game to entertain first and foremost. Mm-hmm. You can grind 1-0s out and you can be effective doing that. But eventually, even grinding 1-0 results out, even getting points, even clean sheets, eventually in the modern day society that we live in, that will get you. There's a guy in India, it's not sustainable, exactly. There's a guy in India who does exactly that. There's a guy called Antonio Habas. If you Google him or WhatsApp him or Wikipedia, do all the things that you need to do to get information on Antonio Habas. He's actually managed Pune, but he's managing a team called ATK Mohun Bagan. Now, as a broadcaster now, I have to say both of them. He won the title last year with ATK, right? Mohun Bagan won the I-League with another coach who's now employed in the ISL because the two powerhouses of Calcutta merged together and they're called now ATK Mohun Bagan, which Antonio Habas coaches. And he is an absolute 1-0 to the Arsenal kind of guy. 1-0 to the Arsenal. He's an absolute 1-0 merchant. But he then signed a player called Marcelino, who's a Brazilian number 10. Out of the blue, on the last day of the transfer window, he signs Marcelino. He then goes and scores. He then wins the next 3 games. He scores 9 goals in 3 games. Marcelino is just outstanding. He's brilliant. Yeah, it's unreal. The transformation in the team from winning 1-0 every week to now winning 3-2, 4-3. Unbelievable with one player. And now he's gone top of the league. And he's just played yesterday and he went back to winning 1-0. Left Marcelino out. He went and won the game 1-0. He's almost telling you, listen, I'm still a 1-0 merchant. Every so often I might win. It's important you win. That's the most important part of the game. Because you can go into boardrooms and you can say what you want to say.
Do you think that's
if you're winning 3-2, you're going to get a response from everybody. You're going to get, wow, didn't we play great? And isn't he a good player? Isn't he? It's no longer a great coach anymore. He's a great player. But you win 1-0.
Do you think, obviously, like you said, going into the boardroom, and I think as coaches, we can put our coach's hat on and then we can put our fan hat on and be like, as a fan, I understand why you're annoyed or this or that. But it's at the end of the day where the people that own the club, people that run the club, they want, I don't know, let's say they want to keep Hull in the league. Would they rather get relegated playing attractive, fun, open, expansive football, or do you know what I mean?
No, they wouldn't want to get relegated. Yeah. I think they share the same winning vibe then, it's win at all costs. If it was the last game of the season, it would be win at all costs. And we understand that. But you eventually get yourself in that situation. I don't think it's boardrooms you worry about these days. Boardrooms are the last thing you worry about because you have conversations. As long as you keep them conversations open, I think that's important, managing up as well as sideways and down. It's keyboard warriors. It's social media. It's it's fans that now have a say, which is okay. I don't mind them having a say, but hiding behind a keyboard is not the answer.
Yeah.
But they still can and will hide behind a keyboard, because now you're walking into a boardroom a day later after the game, and them keyboard warriors have actually been accessed by the powers that be.
Yeah.
You know, the media guys play a big part. Their job is now to keep them informed. You know, what the supporters thinking.
Yeah.
Are we playing good football? How do they, you know, now they have a massive say. Yeah, they have a massive say in it. And listen, it ain't going away that, you know, bottom line is, if you win, you keep your job. If you've got a decent win ratio, you know, regardless of what division you're in, you keep your job. If you play attractive football and get relegated, you'll lose your job.
Yeah.
It's about winning, but it's also about playing the right kind of way. Now, we've got a guy over here, and again, I'm just making reference to it because I'm in India now. There's a Spanish coach called Carlos Kudrat, who's managing Mangaluru FC, Bangalore, if you like. It's the new name, Bengaluru. And he's just lost his job when he lost 3 games on the bounce, having been at the club for 2.5, 3 years with a philosophy. And that word got muted in the sacking of him. You know, obviously the club come out with a comment and say, we seem to be deviating too far away from our philosophy. And consequently, Carlos has lost his job. Rubbish. Lost three games on the bounce, period.
Jesus. And talking about your time in India, obviously you said how it kind of came about, but you've always obviously wanted to coach abroad, play abroad. Is that still there for you? Like, after obviously doing your broadcasting, you're looking to get back into managing again, or just staying abroad?
Well, it's an advertisement, whether it be free or not, it doesn't matter. It's an advertisement every time I go on TV now to put my opinion out there, and if people want to employ me because of that opinion, then all well and good. It saves me getting a suit on and going into a boardroom, if you like. But, you know, with all due respect, I have been offered 2 or 3 jobs whilst I've been here. And this is a way of keeping me certainly fine-tuned with regards to coaching, with regards to tactics, with regards to players, with regards to the modern day way of thinking, which is important. You know, that's why I came up with the answer of keyboard warriors. I see what kind of effect it has on the broadcaster. You know, if you're not getting the viewing figures, then I'll be out of work again. You know, It's one of them. So I'm not saying things for their benefit. I'm saying things because I'm an honest guy, and this is what comes out of my mouth. It's just, it's as simple as that. And I've got it's wet me whistle for coaching abroad, but I'm also very, very interested in coming back to England. Yeah.
And is that coming back to England to coach? Is that inevitably where you want to just get back to again?
Coach, manage, yeah. You know, there'll be various positions at my time in my career with my experience for, if you want to call it, directors of football and, you know, advice to board members. I've already been on numerous calls with owners of football clubs that just want to pick your brains. You know, you don't want to ever stitch anybody up, and I'm always guarded with conversations where they're going, you know, because I think that's important.
Yeah.
But I am certainly moving in circles in a different area of football that did I think I would ever get involved in. I suppose with experience, it naturally, you know, it progresses to that. You know, it actually translates with what you know into boardrooms, into directors, into their psyche, as it were. And, you know, I've got something to offer, Joe, is what I'm saying.
No, definitely. What I like to do normally now is I'm just going to shoot you with a couple of quick fire questions, just one word, one sentence answers across them. So if I shock you, just think.
I've never had a one word question, but go on.
Biggest achievement in football?
Surviving in the Premier League.
Proudest moment as a player?
Getting promotion
one bit of advice you'd give to any coach, whether they're young or old, anything?
Be true to yourself.
Funniest moment in football that you've been a part of?
Yeah, there's some really good ones, but Bullard's Bullard's impression of my half-time team tour, I think it's up there with the best. And a lot of people thought I was going to take umbrage to it. A lot of people thought I was going to get angry with him, but I thought it was hilarious, absolutely hilarious. And I let him know that. He's a good mate of mine.
Yeah. Where would you see yourself going next in football? I think you've kind of answered that, but in an ideal world, where would you want to be in, say, the next couple of years?
I would like to be back at the pinnacle of football in whatever country that is. And that's the reason why I came to India. If it had been lower leagues in India, I wouldn't have come here. If it's top flight in Japan or China or America, Australia or England, I wouldn't write off anywhere. I like to work with top class players with that kind of mentality. And I think, I'd love to get to the top flight in England again one day.
Best signing you've ever made? It could be at any level. It doesn't have to be at the Prem.
Yeah. I would have said, strangely enough, it wasn't my signing, but Ian Ashby. But I inherited him, and I certainly didn't let him go, that's for sure. So we had 5 great years together at Hull City. But signing itself, it's a good question. Really good question. You may think I'm crazy on this one.
Go on then.
But it was very close to actually working out. And I thought it was a great achievement just to get him back on the field of play, Niall Ranger.
Yeah. And
it was probably my greatest challenge where players are concerned. I would have said that if I could have succeeded, and probably the reason why I lost my job eventually at Southend, but they're the fine moments, they're the very, very close. Wins and loses, heads or tails, toss of a coin. If it works, you're in work. If it doesn't work, you're out of work. But I love that challenge. That's the best challenge you can ever have in life.
And where do you see football going in the next 5 to 10 years in terms of coaches? Because I think we're seeing a massive change now in what coaches need to be doing, how to do it. What's your advice for coaches in the next kind of 10 years and where you see it going?
The way this pandemic has worked has certainly affected everybody, and online coaching and Zoom calls and keeping in touch with each other. And even my wife now is teaching, and she's online teaching, and the visual side of things is so important. Mm-hmm. The learning skills that you can hone in on are the most important parts. And always remember, I think that you have 5 senses. Everyone says you've got 6, but you've got 5 senses that you can actually work with. Mm-hmm. Don't write any of them off. Don't write any of them senses off, because if you can improve just one person's sense of awareness, mm-hmm. spatial sense, hearing, seeing, feel, touch, taste, whatever, all of the things that we just take for granted in life, I think the pandemic has brought it to my attention that somebody might have X-ray vision, 20/20 vision, but they might not be able to hear clearer or clearly. They might not be able to, the sounds and noises that mm-hmm. can actually improve you. And I'm only saying this, I'm going back, as I'm talking to you, I'm actually thinking about when Yuri Yokayev signed at Bolton Wanderers. Me and Sam were standing on the touchline on a Friday before a game on a Saturday, and we always used to train at the Reebok Stadium when we were playing there. Mm-hmm. So we just thought we'd acclimatise everybody to changing rooms, to environment, this, that, and the other. And we watched Yokayev, who was a World Cup winner. He had won the World Cup. You can't get any better. what was he doing at Bolton Wanderers? That's what we were asking ourselves. But
Yeah.
you can't get any better. And we were watching him. At the end of the session, he wasn't grabbing a bag of balls and a couple of kids or a goalkeeper and having a finishing session. He was wandering around. And I just broke away from Sam and went across to him and I said, Yuri, what are you doing? And he said, it's something I've always done, you know, whenever I'm playing at a ground and we train there the day before, I always look at the hoardings to find out where I am on the pitch.
Okay.
And I'm like, are you kidding me? He said, no. Even this is at home. I know that sign over there. I know I'm somewhere near the edge of the penalty box. This sign here, I'm in the penalty box, 6-yard box. And it was everything. It's that spatial awareness of a World Cup winner that I'm going, if you can, people might think that's crazy, but you can't argue with a World Cup winner. You can't argue with a guy that's at the pinnacle of his career, has actually won the best thing that you could ever wish. You know, when I'm saying to you, the first thing I'm thinking of is my time as promoted. You ask Yuri Yoka, it'll be his time as a World Cup winner. It won't be the conversation he had about spatial awareness to me.
Yeah.
But all of them things are little things that you can improve on a daily basis, just work at. And it just comes down to this pandemic. It's honed my skills in a different manner as a coach or as a person to be able to improve players in some way, shape or form.
Amazing. 100%. Everyone, make sure you like and subscribe. It's been an absolute pleasure, Phil. I think you've had a great insight, everyone, to everything. And yeah, pal, it's been amazing. Hope to see you back in the league soon.
Thank you very much, Joseph. Thank you.
Cheers, pal.